I want to use as a starting point for this exploration. Lazaris comments that it's easier to succeed than it is to fail, that joy is all around us and we're busy fighting to keep it out, and that techniques that work well, Lazaris refers to their own, but techniques that work well are often quickly forgotten and not used. So what's going on here? And the intersection with my own life is breath work. I find that 5 to 15 minutes of good breath work. We can try it a little bit here just to give you a sense of what I'm talking about. So all mouth, leave the nose out of it, and simply breathing in forcefully. It's called work, so breath work. Breathe in forcefully and fully, and then no holding or anything, but then gently let it out. Then work to breathe in fully, gently let it out, right? So that's going to result in a slightly longer exhale than inhale. Just that for 10 minutes is enough to profoundly change my state. I feel more grateful. I get the sense of being enough. I feel happy. I stop ruminating. My body feels better. All good things. Do you want to feel healthier? Do you want to feel more alive? Do you want to be happier? Do you want to have a stronger sense of mastery? Right? No-brainer questions. Do you want to spend a lot of money doing that, or do you want to do it for free? Do you want to spend years doing that, or do you want to do it in 10 minutes? Free, any place, anytime, right? No special requirements. Now, this is what I find interesting. There is nothing that I have resisted more than this exercise. Tried it the first time, worked incredibly. Amazing, right? Tried it the second time, worked incredibly. And then I sat down to do it the third time, and fidgeting, resistance, etc. And so I was fascinated. This alerted me that something's going on, meaning I did not believe or understand the statements that Lazaris said that it's easier to succeed than it is to fail. I didn't believe it. I didn't understand it. I didn't see people working hard not to succeed, right? I saw people working hard to succeed and little things leading to failure. So, for the record, I think both are true, meaning I think you can say it's easy to fail and hard to succeed, and you can find plenty of substance for that. But I think it's great to be able to find some areas where the opposite is true, and this is one of them. It's much easier to do breath work for 10 minutes and have a great day than it is to not do breath work and have an anxious day, a depressed day, another kind of day. So what's going on here? And to begin with that, we start with all that is, right? Which, if we think of the radius of the Big Bang, right? Possibility, probability moving out in all directions. Reality is circular, right? So we have a circular, highly complex reality that is beyond any human mind's capacity to understand in even a tiny bit of its full nuance. So we have a tremendously large possibility field that is expanding out in all directions. And what we do is we create a very crude, dumbed down version of reality with language. And the language serves to create a model. And we stop relating to reality and start relating to our model of reality. And within our model of reality is a tinier shape, right? And it's a pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being that the I identifies with. A pattern that is attached to. A pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. And that the ego says, that's me. How do I know it's me? Because that's what I did yesterday. How do I know it's me today? Because I'm thinking the same thing I thought yesterday. I'm feeling the same thought. I'm doing similar things. I'm being a similar way. That's definitely me. That nose looked like that yesterday. It looks like that today. That voice speaks like that. Yesterday, it's still speaking. So it's a very self-referential pattern, right? That's me because that's who I was, right? So that's the ego's attachment to the pattern that it identifies with, holds on to. Now, as soon as that pattern dissolves, as soon as I go from that's the way the world is and I believe that and I eat this and I don't like that and this is what I do every day, as soon as that pattern, as soon as that routine dissolves, we're left with the unspeakable. We're left with chaos. We're left with the unknown. We're left without identity to identify with. It's just the beautiful complexity, the beautiful wonder, the terrifying wonder of the unknown, in which everything that we fear and more exists, and in which everything we long for and could possibly wish for exists as well. So both sides of the possibility field exist in the unknown in staggering scale. So the ego is terrified of two things, death and the unknown. They are the same thing. When the ego doesn't know who it is, what it is thinking, or why it's thinking it, what it is feeling, and why it is feeling it, doesn't know what it's going to say next, or why it says this, when the ego loses coherence, the fear of death and the fear of chaos, the fear of being out of control, and the fear of the unknown, all of which are harbingers of trauma, right? The reason the ego fears chaos, the unknown, powerlessness, disintegration, death. The reason the ego fears these things is repeated trauma, large patterns of energy that do their thing before the ego or the cult or family system understands how to attune to those larger patterns. And the ego gets hit like a pinball intersecting with a bowling ball and goes scattering out in shock, in dissociation, in disintegration. The old pattern of thinking, feel is ruptured. And the ego has this terrifying moment of non-existence, of not knowing who it is, what it is, and feeling just terrified of the next massive impact of pain, a tidal wave of energy that it doesn't know how to respond to. So these are symptoms of incompetence and ignorance and blindness as an individual, as a family, as a cult or culture, in a vast ecology where most, or at least half of all that is, all that was and all that will be is much bigger than the ego. It's much bigger than humanity. And those large energy patterns and those large cycles, some of them 10 million years long, can collide with a species, with a planet, with an ego in a way that is terrifying. It threatens the death, the trauma, the pain, and the terror of the ego. And when those collisions happen between the infant and the giants doing their various patterns of things as a fractal microcosm of the universe, when an infant is bullied by a sibling, beaten by a parent, humiliated in front of the classroom, it's shattered. It's regular shattering. It's disintegration. Its loss of coherence is met with a vow. It's met with a response within the ego. I never want to feel that way again. I never want to have this happen to me again. And okay, fair enough, reasonable, understandable, why an ego would want to have a stable identity to hold on to rather than one that's buffeted this way and that. And often, the ego looks around to find sources of stability. It's people at the top of the power chain, people with more money, people with more mass, people that seem to know what they're doing, people with positions of power, people that stay consistent. They said this thing, they always are that way. It's like, oh, I want that. I want that stability. I want that certainty. And in order to get that stability and that certainty, I'm going to have some control. I need to have control. I need to have locks. I can't just have people coming in and raping me and stuff. I need to have locks. I need to know what's going on. I need some cameras. I need this. I need that. Right? And all these protections, these defenses against trauma, against shock, against pain, get built up. And the stable identity. Now, some of the most stable identities are depressed identity. People can be depressed for 10 years. How many people have you met that are joyful for 10 years straight, right? So joy is not a very stable identity. You're up then you're sad. And it's very chaotic, very complex, very dynamic. But depression, oh, I'm depressed. Yes, but this and this and this happened. I'm still depressed, right? Or I'm angry. Anger, you can kind of keep going for quite a while. Oh, I'm always angry at something. There's always something to be angry about. So the constrictive emotions can be stable because you can stay clenching energy even when there's no reason to, right? If you're in self-pity, it's a great clenching energy. And someone comes and gives you a present you weren't expecting. You can say, well, it's about time. It's about time. Why doesn't everyone else give me a present I wasn't expecting? Why is it only one person, right? So you just feel self-pity about that, right? But joy, right? Oh, this wonderful moment. And then your cell phone rings and you get back in the office, or wonderful moment and the wife left you, or your children got in an accident, or the car is stolen, and the moment dissipates, right? It's like there was this wonderful moment, and then she called, and then this, right? And there's highly volatile when you're dealing with joy or precious spontaneous moments or peak experiences. They're volatile. They go up to the peak and then they come down again, and then they go up again and down again. And an insecure ego is very threatened, very how do I control this? How do I control all this? So when you talk about transcendence, what are you talking about? You're talking about transcending the structure, the pattern that the ego uses to define itself. When you talk about change, what are you talking about? You're talking about changing the identity, the pattern that I identifies with. That's me. That's me you're changing. I don't know who I'm going to be, right? So we have incredibly insecure egos, with high levels of psychological illiteracy, high levels of traumatic illiteracy, high levels of emotional illiteracy, and all these blind spots and uncertainties in a shame-based, highly fear-based, scarcity-based cult or culture all create fear. Like, what if this happens? And what if people laugh at me? And what if this goes on again and again? And so the ego doesn't want to change. It doesn't want to transcend. It doesn't want to transform. What it desperately wants is identity that it can identify with. A pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being that I'm in control of, that produces a result that I can predict, right? When I always go to see this person at this time of day, in this location, to do the same old thing that we've always done, the outcome is also going to be familiar of the family. It's going to be predictable, right? But if suddenly I'm feeling this way, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, if all these other things are going on, well, something new may happen. And if it does, how will I respond? Who am I then in that situation, right? And so it boils down to this. We are a highly traumatized, traumatically illiterate cult or culture that has replaced psychological competency with shame, with fear, with pain, with violation, with collision, with shock. And the ego is terrified of that happening again. And without the tools to go about that gentle transformation in a way that gives the ego a sense of respect and honor, it just doesn't want to change, doesn't want to go into these areas where it becomes liquid, where the patterns soften. Now, when you go into a liquid state, one of two things will happen. You will recrystallize in order to form a new pattern. And that pattern will be more intelligent or less intelligent than the original pattern. And if you don't know if it's the unknown, then neither you nor your ego knows what the new pattern's going to be, right? Change everything, and then I'm going to end up broke, or am I going to end up better off, right? I'm going to stop being friends with you so that I have time to meet this other person, but is this other person going to be more friendly or less friendly? I don't know. I don't know. So I don't want to change. I don't want to let go of the identity. So it is incredibly easy to change. It is incredibly easy to transcend. It is incredibly easy to transform. And there are many forms that are far more intelligent than the existing form. Intelligence being measured by the efficiency with which energy is converted into sustainable well-being. Many, many forms that are more intelligent. But there are also many, many forms that are less intelligent, that are less efficient at converting energy into sustainable well-being. And we may break up the marriage and find out we're in a new form that's even worse, right? Because loneliness is a killer, right? And because in a psychologically illiterate culture, what are the odds that we will know what we're doing and that the next person will know what they're doing? Any more than we and the last person knew what we were doing, right? What are the odds statistically? So it's, the ego doesn't want to let go. The ego does not want to dissolve. And so breath work is one of the great transcendent disciplines. It reminds us and connects us with ourself, and the self transcends the ego. reminds us that, right, it's all an illusion. And the ego doesn't want to be reminded that it's an illusion. Reminds us that there's joy in so many ways without controlling the environment, and the ego is not interested in those ways. It's interested in controlling the environment. And so, in summary, a weak and insecure ego, my ego, is frightened of breathwork, is frightened of the unknown. We'll try and do all these kinds of things rather than experience the exaltation, the beauty, the ease, the intelligence of 10 minutes of breathwork. Right? It's easier to do this video. This video is more familiar, more of the family, right? Talking father, talking son. Talking this way before, talking this way now. This conversation is not transcendent. Breathwork, psychedelics, deep meditation, tantric lovemaking, melting into a new form in order to synergize in a relationship. These are transcendent things. And boy, is it uncomfortable for a frightened and traumatized ego to step into the unknown.